know these 5 forgotten Oasis members? Let's find out. Hey everybody, it's Nick here with you. Welcome back to the Raw Squad channel, and welcome to my list of 5 forgotten Oasis members. Sure, you know Liam and Noel and Bonehead and Gwigsy and Alan and Tony and Gem and Andy and Zach and Chris. But do you know these 5 forgotten Oasis members? Sure, they don't get the recognition that some of the other Oasis members do, but they still deserve their place in the Oasis canon, so here we go. In at number 5, we have Terry Kirkbride. Back in 2006, in between the releases of Don't Believe the Truth and Dig Out Your Soul, Noel Gallagher and Gem embarked on an acoustic tour that hit a bunch of different spots around the globe, including a Toronto show that I wasn't able to get tickets to. Still pretty hurt about that. But on that tour, it wasn't just Noel and Gem. They brought a drummer along for the ride named Terry Kirkbride. Hey, that rhymes. Terry Kirkbride is an English drummer who played for Proud Mary, which was one of the first signings to Noel's Sour Mash label back in the early 2000s. I always wondered why the band didn't keep Terry Kirkbride around after Zach Starkey left and before Chris Sherrock joined the band, because it seemed like he was a good fit. Maybe he was unavailable, or maybe he didn't play the drums the way that they wanted him to, but he's still a lesser known drummer in the Oasis canon for a band with a lot of drummers. In at number 4, we have Steve White. In 2001, Oasis was about to embark on the tour of Brotherly Love with the Black Crowes across North America. But drummer Alan White was experiencing some issues with his wrists at the time, so the band hired the next best thing, his older brother. Steve White is one of England's premier drummers. He's played with Paul Weller for a really long time and then played with bands like The Who. He joined Oasis for the tour of Brotherly Love, which is a tour I went to when they stopped in Toronto for a show at the Molson Amphitheater, and for my money, it was the best time that I ever saw Oasis live. I thought Alan White was a great drummer in Oasis, but his brother Steve just brought a different groove in a harder hitting feel that I thought was a great fit for Oasis. And surprisingly enough, Steve White plays in a band called The Family Silver with the next person on this list, and that's Matt Dayton. After the release of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants in February of 2000, Oasis embarked on their world tour in support of the record. But in the middle of the tour, tensions flared up between Liam and Noel, which resulted in Noel leaving the band for the rest of their European tour dates. Left without their leader, the band had to continue on with their European tour dates, so they brought in a guitarist to play rhythm guitar while Gem played Noel's lead parts. They decided on English guitarist Matt Dayton, who at the time played with an English band called Mother Earth, who I've never heard of. I know the Canadian band I Mother Earth, but at the time, I didn't know who Matt Dayton was. I didn't know who Mother Earth was, especially at the time. It was all Brit rock like Oasis and Blur, Manic Street Preachers, The Verve, and that kind of thing. So if you weren't in those bands, I wasn't really familiar. So at the time, I was very confused and kind of puzzled why they brought in this random dude to play guitar for Oasis. Noel did eventually return for the band's UK Standing on the Shoulder of Giants tour dates, including the Wembley Stadium shows that appeared on the Familiar to Millions live album. And Matt Dayton was sent packing after 3 months of playing in Oasis, but you know what? We thank him for his service. And from what I can tell on the internet, he has a really awesome solo career going, so it looks like he's done really well for himself after playing in Oasis. Number 2, we have Scott McLeod. So in 1995, Oasis were on top of the world with the upcoming release of their second record, What's the Story, Morning Glory, and everything was coming up Gallagher. Except for Gwigsy, Paul McGuigan, the bass player of Oasis, he was having a really rough go at the time and briefly left the band due to nervous exhaustion, which was extremely bad news for Oasis at the time because they were about to head out on an extremely important North American tour. But Oasis rolled with it. You see what I did there? Went on the tour and even played the track Morning Glory on The Late Show with David Letterman with Bonehead playing bass. But they still needed a bass player to come on full time, so they hired Scott McLeod from another English band called the Yayas to take over for Gwigsy. If you're wondering who that random bass player is in the Wonderwall video, that's Scott McLeod, who didn't stick around for very long. He bailed in the middle of the US tour, Bonehead retook over bass duties, and Scott took off. But after he immediately regretted his choice to leave the band and told Noel Gallagher that he made the wrong decision, Noel said, "I think you have too. Enjoy signing on." That's classic Noel Gallagher. What a guy. But don't worry, Gwigsy rejoined the band long after, and they released pretty much the biggest record of their career. In at number 1 on the list of forgotten Oasis members, we have Chris Hutton. Before Oasis were Oasis, they were known as The Rain, and neither of the Gallagher brothers were in the band at the time. The Rain formed in Manchester in 1991 by guitarist Paul Bonehead Arthurs, bassist Paul Gwigsy McGuigan, drummer Tony McCarroll, and singer Chris Hutton. But it seemed like the band did a lot of gigging in Manchester at the time and at least wrote a couple of original songs. But depending on who you talk to, Chris Hutton was not living up to the expectations of the other band members for what they were looking for in a vocalist. So they began searching for someone to take over as singer of The Rain, and they found a young, cocky kid from Manchester named Liam Gallagher. But after Oasis got big, everybody came out of the woodwork, including Chris Hutton, who wrote a book about his time in the rain called Don't Look Back in Anger, Growing Up with Oasis. I read this book when it came out in the late 90s or early 2000s. I'm not quite sure when, but it's somewhat controversial because it's about a guy who was kicked out of the band, and the band eventually became one of the biggest bands of all time. So I guess it sucks for him. But as someone who's played in bands all my life and has known lots of people who have left the band or gotten kicked out of the band over the years, I can say it's not that unusual. Bad news for Chris Hutton, but without the Gallagher brothers, Oasis would have never have become what they became. It's like fate, man. You know? So that is my list of 5 forgotten Oasis members. I think I've pretty much gotten all of them. There might be a couple Oasis members that I've forgotten, but these guys don't get the recognition that they deserve in the Oasis canon, so I had to shout them out in a video. Let me know what you thought of the 5 forgotten Oasis members in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a like if you like this video. Make sure to subscribe to us here on the Rock Squad channel if you love Oasis and rock and roll music as much as we do here on the channel. Check us out on social media on TikTok and Instagram at Rock Squad Pod, and I'll see you again for another video here on the Rock Squad channel. Until then, rock on, everybody.